Alien horrified at the power of human weapons. They avoid war because it would be too easy to win. Commander Vex stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Council vessel, watching the small blue planet rotate slowly beneath them. The third planet from the star humans called Sol had been the subject of intense debate for months. Species that inhabited it had recently achieved interstellar communication capabilities, and according to protocol needed to be evaluated for potential membership in the Council. What troubled Vex was not the evaluation itself, but the preliminary reports from the reconnaissance teams. The humans, as they called themselves, possessed technology that defied conventional understanding of warfare. Most species in the galaxy had evolved beyond primitive kinetic weapons millennia ago, yet humans had somehow perfected them to a degree that made even the most advanced council members uncomfortable. The briefing room fell silent as Admiral Koth activated the holographic display. Three-dimensional projections of human weapons systems filled the space above the conference table. The assembled delegates from 12 different worlds leaned forward, their various forms of eyes widening as they processed what they were seeing. A human thermonuclear device exploded in simulation. The blast radius encompassed an area larger than most Council member homeworld capitals. The energy release was calculated in megatons, a unit of measurement that had been obsolete in galactic warfare for thousands of years. Yet humans had created thousands of these devices during what they called their Cold War period. Delegate Tarn from the peaceful Rigel system raised a tentacle in question. How many of these weapons do the humans currently possess? The translator rendered his chemical communication into standard galactic. The reconnaissance officer, a young council member named Zix, consulted his datapad. Conservative estimates suggest they maintain approximately 13,000 active warheads, with the capacity to produce significantly more within a matter of months. Each weapon is capable of destroying everything within a 50-kilometer radius and rendering the surrounding area uninhabitable for decades. The council chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. The Andromedan representative stood, her crystalline form refracting the chamber lights. This is unprecedented. Most species abandon such crude weapons once they develop energy shields or molecular disruptors. Why have humans continued to stockpile these primitive devices? Zix brought up another display showing human military installations. The answer appears to be strategic doctrine. Humans have developed what they call mutually assured destruction. They maintain these weapons not to use them, but to ensure that any conflict would result in the complete annihilation of both sides. It is a deterrent based on the promise of absolute destruction. Commander Vex studied the data with growing unease. The more he learned about human military capabilities, the more he realized that their approach to warfare was fundamentally different from every other species in the galaxy. While most civilizations had developed increasingly sophisticated weapons that could precisely target enemy forces, humans had instead focused on creating weapons so devastating that the very thought of using them prevented conflict. The reconnaissance reports continued to paint a picture of a species that had somehow achieved peace through the perfection of war. Human conflicts had actually decreased in frequency and intensity as their weapons became more powerful. The existence of weapons capable of ending civilization had paradoxically made civilization more stable. What disturbed Vex most was not the weapons themselves, but the implications. If humans could create such devastating technology using primitive nuclear physics, what might they be capable of with access to galactic technology? The Council had strict non-interference policies, but sharing advanced technology with species that approached warfare so differently could have catastrophic consequences. The briefing concluded with footage of human military exercises. Massive formations of soldiers moved with precision across varied terrain. Their individual weapons, while crude by galactic standards, were highly effective. More concerning was their apparent ability to coordinate large-scale military operations across vast distances using primitive electromagnetic communication systems. Admiral Koth dismissed the assembly but requested that Commander Vex remain. The two officers stood alone in the briefing room, surrounded by the holographic displays of human weapons systems. The silence stretched between them as both contemplated the implications of what they had witnessed. Vex, we need to make a recommendation to the full council within the solar cycle. What are your thoughts on human membership? Commander Vex considered his words carefully. The humans represent something we have never encountered before. They have achieved interstellar communication and basic space travel, but their military doctrine is based on weapons so powerful that their use would mean the end of organized society. They have created peace through the promise of annihilation. The Admiral nodded slowly. The question becomes whether this makes them too dangerous to admit to the Council, or whether their unique perspective on conflict resolution could benefit galactic civilization. They have maintained relative peace on their world for decades using deterrence rather than the defensive technologies most species employ. Vex pulled up additional data on human conflicts. During their recorded history, humans had engaged in numerous wars of increasing intensity. Each conflict had driven innovation in weapons technology. The pattern culminated in the development of nuclear weapons, which had effectively ended large-scale warfare between major powers. Instead of using these weapons to conquer their enemies, humans had used them to maintain balance. The implications were staggering. Most galactic species had developed beyond the need for such crude deterrence by creating defensive technologies that made warfare impractical. Energy shields could deflect most attacks, while molecular disruptors could neutralize incoming threats. Humans had instead made warfare so terrible that no rational actor would choose to engage in it. What concerned Vex was the human capacity for innovation under pressure. Their technological development had accelerated dramatically during periods of conflict. If humans joined the Council and encountered hostile species, they might develop countermeasures to advanced galactic weapons systems. The primitive nuclear devices might be just the beginning. The Admiral seemed to read his thoughts. There is another consideration. Human military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force and rapid deployment. Most Council military operations are designed to minimize casualties and preserve infrastructure. Human warfare is designed to achieve decisive victory through the application of maximum force in minimum time. Vex reviewed the reconnaissance data again. Human strategic thinking was built around concepts like total war and unconditional surrender, while other species had developed military technologies focused on precision and control. Humans had focused on devastation and deterrence. Their weapons were designed not to win battles, but to make battles so costly that enemies would surrender rather than fight. Philosophical implications were profound. Humans had achieved peace not through mutual understanding or technological superiority, but through mutual terror. Every major power on their world possessed the capability to destroy civilization itself. This knowledge had created a stability that defensive technologies had never achieved for other species. Commander Vex realized that admitting humans to the Galactic Council would fundamentally change the nature of interstellar relations. The Council had operated for millennia on the assumption that advanced species would abandon primitive weapons in favor of sophisticated defensive systems. Humans had instead perfected primitive weapons to the point where no defense was possible. The question was whether this made humans too dangerous to integrate with galactic civilization, or whether their unique approach to conflict resolution could benefit the entire galaxy. Their deterrence-based strategy had maintained peace on a world with multiple competing power centers for longer than most species had existed in space. Admiral Koth sealed the briefing room and prepared to transmit their recommendations to the Council. The decision would shape the future of galactic civilization. Either humans would be welcomed as members bringing their unusual perspective on warfare and peace, or they would be quarantined until they developed beyond their current military doctrine. As the transmission prepared to send, Commander Vex wondered if the Council truly understood what they were dealing with. Humans had not simply developed powerful weapons, they had created a philosophy of warfare based on the principle that some conflicts were too terrible to fight. This wisdom, born from the edge of self-destruction, might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The message traveled across space, carrying the recommendation that would determine humanity's relationship with the stars. In the end, the choice would be made by beings who had never faced the choice between peace and annihilation. Whether they would understand the terrible wisdom of mutually assured destruction remained to be seen. The small blue planet continued its rotation, unaware that its fate was being decided by creatures from distant stars. On its surface, humans went about their daily lives protected by weapons too terrible to use yet too effective to abandon. Their peace was maintained by the promise of devastation, and their civilization preserved by the threat of its own destruction. This was the paradox that faced the Galactic Council. How do you integrate a species that has achieved peace through perfecting war and maintained civilization by threatening to destroy it? The answer would determine whether humanity would join the stars or remain forever isolated by their own terrifying effectiveness at warfare. The universe waited for the decision that would change everything.